Good afternoon, everybody. You lucky people, 2 interviews in one day. You're probably thinking, well, that's enough of him. I've had enough of him now. I'm going to go and buy me Christmas tree instead, which is what we've just done. And I've just had to cut the bottom off it because apparently my wife tells me that if I cut the bottom off it with a saw, it will drink up water properly because otherwise it gets sealed. So you have to do these things. But now I'm completely out of breath. So apologies to Rob here, who has come along to tell us all about his latest music. But first, just before he does, let's have a man and his laptop.
I need to get going, Mel. I'll see you later.
Rob, thanks for joining.
Yes.
Now, listen, you're one of these people that some people would say are careless because you know you can't decide what you want to do in life, and other people would say, well, you're a creative, and actually, therefore, it's absolutely right that you can just do what the hell you like. Which way, which side do you go on?
I think I'm a dilettante, and I use that in the most positive sense of the word. I don't think. I feel like if you're a creative person, you can kind of go out in different directions, and you don't have to be one thing or another thing, and that's okay. I think it takes a while to sort of understand that. I think you think you have to go out and just be great at something, and even if you are great, it doesn't mean it's going to happen for you. Most of the time, it isn't.
Yeah.
So I am careless, but also I think a creative person, a dilettante.
I think there will be 100 people watching who have grown up and have reached this point in their life where they feel kind of maybe that they're slightly disappointed that they didn't actually achieve what they wanted to do creatively. But maybe if they thought about it for a minute, they're actually using their creativity in whatever they're doing now, and they didn't become the rock star or the musician or the actor or the artist or whatever, but actually how they're using their creativity is really important. You know?
Yeah, I think you have to be happy with where you net it out. I mean, you don't want to go through life with regret, and if you feel like you gave it your best effort, and you know you're happy with where you are, who you are, you know, if you like yourself, and you know you have a family, or you know there are achievements that aren't necessarily up there in lights, but are more significant, and so
absolutely more significant, completely and utterly that. And I've said it once before on the show, and it came from the most bizarre place, because you would not expect this person to come up with anything profound. But Gene Simmons from Kiss once said in a documentary that I watched him, he said, actually, exactly that. He said there are millions of rock stars out there, but they're rock stars being nurses, they're rock stars being accountants, they're rock stars being this, and they just don't realize that they are rock stars because they are smashing it at whatever it is that they're doing, and they've got that rock and roll attitude, you know, which would put them up on stage if they were up on stage, but they're not needed there. They're needed out there doing that. And I thought that was actually quite profound of the man, to be frank.
Sure. I think also is you know, as I get older, you just put less of a value on celebrity and
full stop
and fame, and I think that there's just other things societally that are just a lot more important.
Yeah.
So like, you know, if you spend, you know, I remember my mom fell down the stairs and I was in the ER for like 13 hours, and I was so blown away by the level of skill and commitment by the people just like running around taking, you know, it just seemed so intense and invigorating, and it was kind of eye-opening just in there's just a lot more important things than, you know, getting up on stage.
Yeah, absolutely. But having said that, you've done that in your time, and you've made some more music. Is that sense of where you are at now in your life prevalent in what you're doing now?
Very much so. Yeah, I think I had taken a break for a while. I was starting in bands when I was in high school, and I was in Boston playing in bands, and in North Carolina, in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and then in New York City. And then I remember I was playing a show, and a friend of ours was friends with I don't know if you're familiar with Yellow Tango, but the members of that band were there, and they were watching the show, and I just felt disingenuous. I felt I felt very disconnected from the music I was making, and I was like, I'm fucking done. And for a long time, I just didn't pick it up, but it didn't matter. And then about 5 years ago, I started another project called Dads with a Z, and it was just it was all very tongue in cheek, and it was like writing songs like heading downstairs, and I'm no longer attractive, just things that were like just sort of like meant to make us laugh. But like I really enjoyed writing songs again. And from there, I started writing songs that actually started to mean something. I found that I was able to speak from a different perspective. And it came back to me and I think a better way than it ever had been. I think it felt a lot more personal.
Do you know what? I can completely sympathize with that or have empathy with that whole experience, because I remember I started in a band when I was 14. And that was absolutely everything. And then I remember when that stopped, the one thing that I did was get together with a friend, I guess around sort of 18 or whatever, and we just compared different band nights as this kind of tongue-in-cheek band called Vinyl Crap. And it was but it was so much fun. It was just fun. And I was starting to write comedy as well for radio and stuff like that. So it was like, it was a kind of pathway between the two worlds.
Yeah.
But it was so, for me, it was so needed. It was kind of like, well, actually, sometimes with music, you can just have fun with it. And it can just be almost laughing at yourself is really cathartic in terms of actually making you realize, well, everybody laughs at you sometimes, and that's fine.
Oh yeah, you have to be self-deprecating, and I think there's also this gap that happens. I think that so much of making music when you're young is an expression of angst and anger and young love. There's just so much kind of raw emotion that disappears as you get older, for better or worse. Like I think it's just for survival. You cannot feel the way you feel things at 19.
Can't feel that emotional forever.
No, you can't. You won't make it out of your early 20s if that's the case. So I think what was happening is I was making music in that vein, but not feeling that way. I was starting to just, and another thing that happened, I saw the Replacements got back together, and I saw them play at Forest Hills in Queens. And I loved the Replacements when I was younger, and they were just the embodiment of like kind of that bratty, youthful, who gives a shit kind of rock. And they played all the songs, and it was note perfect, but it just felt strange. They almost felt like puppets because it felt who they were was disconnected from these, young brats who made that music. And that was another thing. I was like, I'd love to hear like a record they would make now. And so that was kind of when I started making this record. I wanted to do something that was very honest in where I was in life, and I was able to do that.
Yeah,
I think some people feel like they still need to write for like a younger audience, or write for the audience that they have,
or write for an audience, maybe even.
Yes.
Yeah. And do you feel like you're so on this? You're really writing for you?
Yeah, I don't give a shit. Like it's very liberating to like when I was 19, I wanted it so bad. I want to get on that bill. I want to play on this show. I want to get signed. I don't care. I have a way of putting out my music. I have the people playing with that I like to play with, and I have a job. Like it's not important. So it's so much more pure, and I think it's so much better than the music I made when I was younger for that reason.
Yeah, and then if people love it and are attracted to it, exactly, and that's just kind of like but they're probably. The thing is that they will probably love it and enjoy it because they've been through the same journey.
Yeah. And also, I think, just from a more primal level, like they're still hooks. There's still
Right.
it's still like good players and good instrumentation, and it's still like sounds good. It's just like, it's just not trying to be anything that it's not, which I think is a difference in some of the work that I did when I was younger musically.
Yeah, and that being real and being authentic all the time is really important, as you say, but both for the music and the art, but also for self-preservation as one gets older. Just being happy with yourself, etc., and and knowing when to down tools as well, which is it's quite an important thing, right? I mean, we were joking earlier about doing a Christmas tree, and you said, well, I might have to do it this weekend, but actually, getting the sense of where everything fits in your life, and when it's important to just, when one of the kids or your other half or whatever says, actually, we need to do this, we need to spend some time or whatever doing this or whatever, just knowing that, we do. We need to, I need to put that aside for 5 minutes and stop. That's really important stuff, I don't know whether anyone have you written a song about just stopping what you're doing and spend 5 minutes with the missus yet, or not?
There's a song on the record called Homemade,
right,
which is probably the most personal thing. It's about, my wife was a child of divorce. I was a child of divorce. And it was like, I think part of getting married was like, oh, let's try to do something a little bit better and different than what we had, And I think that song is really about that. It's about, kind of making something, coming from sort of two broken homes and making something, great. Well, at times great, how family life is. It's not always amazing, but it's, I'm amazed we did it. And it's still, I've got two great kids, and it's probably the thing I'm the most proud of, I think, out of all the things I've done in my life. I mean, I know it sounds kind of trite, but I believe it's true. And also the most interesting thing creatively is making kids. For me, I just think like it's just watching them kind of grow and stuff. It's just so interesting, like way more interesting than anything else that I have.
Children teach you more about yourself than you could ever read in any book or anything else. Would you agree with that?
It's good and bad.
Yeah, right. I mean, sometimes you see things in children. It's a weird thing being a parent, and anyone that's not been a parent, I'm now going to give you 5 minutes of my wisdom of parenthood. But having 5 children, I've got some credibility in that.
Holy shit, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Nice work.
But it's a weird thing, because you see the mistakes of your parents as well, and you think, well, I'm going to not do that as a parent, etc. And then you suddenly see not just some of the your parent coming out in you as you parent, but also you see some of yourself coming out and the behaviors that you perhaps didn't want to happen in your life coming out in your children, and you've got to
absolutely got to try to undo it.
You've got to undo it. You've got to try and wrestle with it, etc. And so one of the things I think about having children in your life is that you're constantly reevaluating yourself as well. And I think it's a magical thing. It's a hard thing. It's a thing that you've really got to work on. It's but it has so much more benefit than anything else you ever do, because ultimately you are producing this, or helping to produce this person,
Yes.
And it's really interesting in terms of how you go about writing these days. How do you start with a piece of work like this?
Lately, I've been really kind of obsessive. I've been writing a lot recently, and usually it's like a melody that comes to me in the middle of the night. Like I wake up a lot, like 1 o'clock in the morning, and then I'll
And do you have a way of putting that down at 1 o'clock in the morning? It's like you don't get the guitar out.
I put the melody on my phone and on the notes of my phone. I have thousands of just melodies. I have the melody.
Do you ever forget the next day when you listen back to it? And do you ever go, "Oh, that wasn't what I thought I put that"? Does that happen?
Yes,
do you ever go?
Yes. I the other day I was like, "Oh, I got to listen to that thing I did last night. It was so good." And I listened to it, and it was just I was trying to sing really quietly. It was god awful, and I think it's just gonna stay on the phone. But yeah, sometimes I think it's better than it is. And then what happens? I'll come up with my guitar, and I'll try to put some music under that melody, and then from there I'll kind of obsess again. It happens a lot in the middle of the night, and I'll get up and I'll start writing words, and they sort of develop over time that way. And usually it's one at a time, but now I've been doing 3 or 4 I have going at once, which is it takes a while. And then I'll send them over to my friend Daniel, who plays guitar, and he'll write his parts. And that's how it's been going recently.
Does that become a social thing for you in the middle of the night with your missus, or does she manage to just sleep through it?
She's out. Yeah. No, she's out. She gets really annoyed because I keep getting, if I have another idea, I'll get up again. I go back to the bathroom. I turn the fan on in the bathroom so it's extra loud. She can't hear me. And she's like, stop getting up and down.
Well, no, because we've got a thing now. Whereas if I get an idea in the middle of the night and I need to kind of wake up or whatever, and I wake her up, she said, "Oh, okay, I'm going to read a book for a bit." So and then it turns into a conversation, and it's just like, "Oh, we've had a nice chat. That's nice. Oh, we better go to sleep now."
we hang out in the morning at 6 in the morning. We get up and have coffee in bed. We go down, we set the timer, we have coffee, and that's we spend an hour together in the morning. That's really nice. I look forward to it. You've
got to have those little moments. You've got to have that little bit of time somewhere in the day. Yeah. Where you just reconnect with the people around you. It's really important in terms of finding people to play together on a project like this, or when you're writing this stuff. Does that just come out of friendship these days, or do you actually specifically look for people to work with?
Well, this one was so strange the way it happened. Originally I was going to go to I had rented a studio up in Woodstock, and I had a bunch of friends, and we were going to go and just knock them all out in the weekend. They had never heard them. It was a lot more low key and kind of experimental. And then my wife's sister had to have surgery, and so I canceled it. And then I'd started to plan something again, and then the pandemic hit. So usually I'm just going into a studio with a band. We've been rehearsing. It's just, that's the way I've always done it. But this was so much different. I just recorded, I found a studio in town. This guy, Ray Ketchum, who's in a band called Elk City.
Yeah.
Great dude. He was so nurturing. I just went in with my guitar and just sort of laid down the skeletons of the tracks. And then slowly we built them over time. And some of them were friends, my friend Joe Ventura, who I played with forever. He played drums on a lot of it. I have a friend in town, this guy, Daniel London, who's an actor. And he's like, "Oh, I played guitar a while ago." And he's a fantastic guitar player. I had no idea. And he played all the lead guitars. His wife, Megan Riley, who's a singer-songwriter, she sang some backups. And she had a bass player. She works with Scott Anthony, who played bass. My friend Chuck Johnson, I don't know if you're familiar with the composer Chuck Johnson. He does a lot of sort of pedal steel stuff and studio stuff. So he laid some stuff on and also did some mixing for it. So it was really collaborative. And
so it sounds like almost it got its own little life of its own, where someone went, "Oh yeah, I'll do a bit on that." It's you started it, the foundations were laid down, etc., and it was I could play on that. Yeah, okay. It just developed.
Yeah,
that's a lovely way to write, isn't it? Oh, that's a lovely way to put an album together.
And I got my daughter sang on it as well. My daughter sang some backup vocals, and my son played some keyboards. Cool.
Kind of does that. I mean, because that's it's a very organic process. Did that kind of take some pressure off of it a little bit as well, or did it actually kind of make it even more exciting in a way? Because as people came in and said, "Yeah, I'm gonna put something else on it," it was like, "Ooh, it's going in that direction a little bit now," and keeps changing direction a little bit.
Oh yeah, it was a pure studio project in a way that I've never
Yeah,
done before. I felt like Steely Dan. No, I didn't, but it felt but it felt like it felt like it was like, just more studio intensive and, less about just
yeah.
going in with four dudes and
Because when
bashing
you're
it
a
out.
band and you practice all the time, and then you've written a load of material, and then you go into, you're almost that you're kind of thinking, well, we're producing this set of songs almost to then go out live with and
Yeah.
continue on after the studio bit. It's almost like a stop off point. It's
Hmm.
not, yeah,
Yeah.
it's not the, yeah. Whereas this probably felt a bit more like something building slowly, and then all of a sudden it's there.
Yeah. It became more ambitious as it went on. And yeah, it
Yeah,
was really wild to watch them grow, because sometimes it'd be like, 3 months. It was during the pandemic too, so there was long periods in between where you couldn't get together and record. It couldn't, or it would just have to be one person in the studio. Like it was complicated, but
yeah.
I like
When
the
you say
process.
gone more ambitious, was there ever a point, in there where you go, could you get an orchestra in there? Could you?
Uh, I thought about it. I did want strings. Like
I knew you
I
might
kept
have.
going back in. I was like, we should go back in for what I kept adding harmonies and stuff. And Ray had a lot of ideas, and I just kept. I got a little. I'm not going to say obsessive, but I spent some time with it,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
really tried to make it good.
So actually, was the difficult part on this album actually knowing when to step away from it?
There was a financial alarm that went off at a certain point, where
Ding
it was
ding
like,
ding ding. Your
yeah,
time's
yeah,
up,
yeah,
Rob.
yeah. Where it was time. It was time to like sort of like, okay, but I
Yeah,
was also happy with where it was, and I probably
yeah,
did a few extra sessions where I probably could have let Sleeping Dogs lie, but I was into it.
yeah. Well, yeah, we should just kind of reiterate for anyone listening that it doesn't sound like you get 3/4 of the way through the album, and then it's just kind of, boom, boom,
No,
boom,
no,
boom at
no.
the
It's
end of it.
yeah,
It's a complete work. Rob actually did
yeah,
it all. It's fine. It's all there. He didn't run out of money 3/4 of the way through, and the
no,
last two tracks are just dogs barking. That's not true.
no.
You
That's not true.
it's
Although
all there.
the last track is it was left over from the Dad's project I was telling you about. It's called Brand New Buick, and it's just like me and guitar, and yeah, it's sparser than the others.
I know. I can't remember too many tracks that actually mention the Buick. The only other track I can ever remember that mentions a Buick was by Thomas Dolby.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, Thomas Dolby actually, it was a whole album. Thomas Dolby wrote an album, Aliens Ate My Buick.
Sorry, what was the title?
Aliens Ate My Buick.
Oh, Aliens Ate My Buick. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool.
Fantastic album. Yeah. And there's a track on there about keys to his Ferrari, which again is quite yeah. But people need to go and listen to that now, along with Rob's album. You can do them back to back, and you can write a comparison between the two if you like.
Yep, compare and contrast.
One is incredibly overproduced because it's Thomas Dolby. There you go. But that's what Thomas Dolby does best, is overproduce his own album. So it's lots of engine revving and little sound effects and spatial effects on it. Well known for his work with Prefab Sprout, of course. And any inspirations for you over the years musically? I mean, you mentioned a couple a minute ago, but anybody else that kind of springs to mind?
Well, I've always loved music, but I find that I think I'm a lot of like sort of 90s indie rock kind of shaped like my more lasting aesthetic, but it's all filtered like through 70s AM radio. Because when I was a kid, I'd go on so as I mentioned, my folks were divorced, and my older brother would always put on Casey Kasem's Top 40, which was like the Top 40 countdown, and then I just listened in the back of the car going to and from my parents' house on the weekend. My dad lived an hour and a half away.
Yeah.
So all of that 70s AM kind of like Bread and, you know, Todd Rundgren, all this like really kind of emotional, really catchy, hooky stuff. Oh my God, that's one of my favorites. Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's or like when I was listening in the car, and I play it for my son too. But it's all right, and we're coming home. We gotta get right back. But we started like all that stuff is just like really hooky and really catchy. And I listen to like a lot of '60s kind of psychedelic stuff. So lately, I always dismissed music from the '50s, like sort of as, you know, like doo-wop and like stuff from my parents. I never liked it. But recently I've been obsessed with on Sirius satellite radio. There's the '50s channel, and I've been listening to it like crazy every night while I cook and stuff, and it's incredible. A lot of it I just didn't like.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I can understand what you're saying there, because there was a lot of it that's it seemed, I don't know, just too stripped out in a way.
It's so romantic though. Like I just didn't like straight up like rock and roll, like blues based rock and roll, but like the Everly Brothers or like the Mills Brothers, like the really beautiful harmonies. And it's always just about like, you know, forlorn teen love. It's cool. It's just something that I've just recently started listening to a lot, and it's been inspiring me.
Yeah, but I think it's what you take from different music when you listen to it, isn't it? I mean, as you say, even all of that radio friendly stuff in the '70s or whatever. I can remember my parents driving along listening to the New Seekers and the Carpenters, and you know.
Oh yeah.
Right, but some of the melodies and actually the singing, amazing, absolutely amazing.
I was just thinking about the Zombies actually, because you are British. That's another band that I really love, and like talking about singing, Colin Blunstone's voice is like butter. You know, that's incredible. Great band.
Yeah. And it's, you know, there's great music in every genre and great music in every era, and sometimes it gets inaccessible to all of us within a generation for a period, just because it's not necessarily wrapped up in the right paper, if you know what I mean. It's just not got the right sounds around it or whatever, and then it's about
or the right people, like the people who like I fucking hated the Grateful Dead. I couldn't stand them, mostly because of the people I knew who were into the Grateful Dead that were insufferable. But then, you know, in the past few years, I've listened to it and been kind of blown away by how good the music is. But it was obscured by the surrounding douchery of, you know, the culture.
Yeah, I know, totally get it. And you just got to unpick that. There's got to be a moment where you just, you know, decide to properly listen to it, and that's the key with all music, isn't it? Is that for a lot of us, for a while, you hear it in the background somewhere, or you tune yourself out of it because you've got a predisposition to it, and you just think, oh no, I don't want to listen to that. But then something makes you stop and listen to it, and you're like,
Has there been a band like that for you that you've come around on that you used to despise?
Oh, well, the very first one of these shows that I did, I spoke to Fred Bong about when I was very young. I went on holiday with my parents, and we at a holiday camp, and there was a disco dancing competition, which I won. I'd never win a disco dancing competition.
Congratulations.
Right? Yeah. Well, I clearly
hold on to that victory.
I think clearly I just looked deranged, and the person thought I better give him something to stop him hurting himself. And that's probably that's my theory anyway. But I won a load of records as part of it, because it was run by Radio Luxembourg, who of course were a great radio station. And there was some really interesting records in there for a young, I don't know, I must have been 10, 11, something like that. There was a Flying Lizards record, and then there was another record, which was the record that I was telling Fred Bong about, which was New Picnic Time by Pierre Ubu. And I listened to that. I took it home, I put it on the record player, I listened to it, and I just could not make sense of it. It was just like, there's this guy that you've got this thrashy kind of guitar type thing, but it was all, it sounded like it was slowed down. And then this high pitched squeal of a voice going like, "Hey, yeah, it's me again," and it's just like, what the hell is going on here? And I tried for ages listening to that, and I was like, but I kept coming back to it. There was something about it, even though I'd really disliked it. There was something about it. I just thought, it's interesting, isn't it? I just got to, and then with time, you just go, I really like that. It just suddenly it kind of breaks you. But I think with a lot of music, especially over time, you just, I talk a lot about people don't listen to music, and I honestly believe that's true. I think that you have to develop ears that are open to something different, and it's the one skill that I wish that a lot more people would do. And I think it's difficult these days, in particular, where people listen to their music on a black dot, and they can just go listen to 20 seconds of it and then go skip, and it skips to the next thing. The great thing about having to take a record out and putting it on a thing and selecting it and doing it and going across the room to it, etc., was that you'd committed like a couple of minutes of your life to doing that, so you kind of had to stick it out. But I think
involved,
but I think it's a great thing to do, because I think actually if you push it, almost there's going to be people that go, why would you do this? But pushing yourself through with bits of music that challenge you as a listener and make you initially go, but after a while you try it again and you try it again and you try it again, it broadens your listening. And then suddenly you do get to a place where you go, do you know what? I can appreciate that. And then once you start to appreciate that, you start to be able to appreciate other bits of music that are challenging as well. And with time, you really can you can start to appreciate music in general, I think. I think that's a great place to be.
Yeah, I think you just grow into a lot of music too. Like you might not have been ready for it, or when you were younger, and it just takes time.
Well, that's certainly true as well. I mean, some music, the message just wouldn't be the right time. When you're 4, listening to Kiss, maybe not the right thing. Maybe wait until you're a teenager. Slipknot when you're 6, not a good idea. But it takes time, etc. And your music isn't just about the sound that you hear as well, is it? It's about the emotions that you're feeling, and it's about the experience that you've lived, etc. And all of those things, as that changes in your life, that then changes the way that you're able to absorb that information, because you're coming from a completely different point in terms of being able to absorb it. So I think it's one of the things that makes music so special, is that not only does it have that kind of power to eat its way into your life in a really weird way, that actually most other things you would just put them down and you wouldn't ever go near them again. You can kind of develop this sense around it. But also, it's when you realize as well that what you get out of that piece of music is so completely different from that person over there. And yet you can both really appreciate it as well.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the great things for musicians when you you perform music, and then people come up to you and talk to you about music, because you then hear the stories that about why it's special to them, and you think, whoa, I wouldn't have ever put that with it. Does that ever happen to you?
Yeah, I've had like some really nice interactions, over the course of the years with different bands. It sort of depends on the project. I was in a band called The Last Band USA, which was very performative and a little bit comedic. Like my friend and I took on these personalities as these delinquent cousins, and
loved it.
It was like the opposite, where it was just pure fun, and it was really nice to be able to connect with people that way, just totally stupid and fun. Whereas opposed to like, some more heartfelt, indie rock songwriter stuff, people say it means something to them, but they're not dancing, in the same way. But it is nice when you have fans. I remember the first time I was in a band called Tinsel in Chapel Hill, and we got a letter. It was back, before internets, and we got a letter from somebody in Tennessee asking if we'd come play, saying how much they love the band, and we ended up playing a house party at their house. It felt great, the fact that somebody wanted you to, it felt that connected to the music. So yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, I think it's ultimately it's one of the things that people make music for, is to touch people like that. Because you do it partly for yourself, because if you don't do it, you go mad.
Yeah, almost entirely for myself at this point. I hope people like it, but if they don't, that's okay.
But I think actually by doing it for yourself and making it as authentic as it is, it will touch people, and that you'll have that effect on people. It can almost unavoidably not happen unless it's absolute rubbish, in which case. But it's not the case in your case, Rob. So you're all right. You've written a corker.
Thank you, Graham.
No, it's a really great album, and I love this, the whole bit of the opening track about trying on heavy shoes.
Oh,
and yeah. Whose heavy shoes have you tried?
I think that was just about like kind of having empathy, just generally trying empathy. And being a less selfish person and trying to see things from other people's viewpoints. A lot of times with the songwriting process, you just sort of write these words, these kind of nonsense words in the beginning, and then you sort of like build something around them. Like they were there for a reason. It felt like they just kind of went with the music in the beginning, but then they sort of become a story. And I think this might have been one of the songs that was kind of like that. And I felt also, especially being here in the States, everything is just so divided and divisive and kind of angry and hateful, especially under Trump, the way it's been like the past. So I think I was trying to write something sort of healing in my own way, trying to write something positive. And that was kind of.
And I also think you were actually channeling your inner Everly brother as well with that.
That was the missing Everly brother.
Yeah. I think so. I think that's that kind of heavy, that it's that kind of soulful heavy, wasn't it, that you were talking about there? So that works really well. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
So now listen, so people know, before we completely forget, where can people get what's the album called? Where can people get it? So that they all now go and spend lots of money.
Great. It's Bandcamp Friday today. It's on Bandcamp through the Magic Door label, the Magic Door Bandcamp site. The record is called Phased Out by me, Rob Munk. Today, if you buy it today, well, it's the best day.
It's the best day to go and do it. And Bandcamp is probably my favorite place to go and buy music, I have to say, other than actual record shops.
Yes.
Selling actual records.
The vinyl will be coming out in February. Like the supply chain's just backed up. So right now it's just digital. You can stream it on all the popular streaming sites if you want to, or you can pre-order it on vinyl at Bandcamp.
Oh, lovely. Do pre-order the vinyl. everybody.
Please.
Because vinyl is a wonderful thing. It's very sustainable as well. I'm gonna tell people that it's very sustainable because unlike the little disc things that sit in your home, which you want to throw at people, you'll want to keep it forever, and that is as sustainable as you get. I mean, a lot of people have said, can we find an environmental way of producing vinyl? Well, it's environmental anyway, because
Graham, it's even more sustainable because it's on recycled vinyl on recycled paper. I did it sustainably.
No, really?
I did. Yep, that's true.
Oh man, you've just surpassed yourself.
I have to catch up.
There you are. That's fantastic. So look, it's completely sustainable. So you just go and buy this vinyl. In the meantime, because you can't get it on vinyl at the moment, go and download it on Bandcamp and pay money for that as well. Pay twice, because that way you'll feel better, and so will Rob.
Yes. And I'll make another. I don't want to make another record. So
and he does. He wants to make another one, and that means he can come back and talk to me again, which would be a delight. So please go and do that. Rob, you've been an absolute pleasure talking to. And you see, we didn't even mention the acting, really, which was great.
We'll save it for next time.
Why did we need to? We don't need to. I mean, we know Rob's multidimensional. What I will say, though, is I do like the mise en scène you've got. I do like the fact that you've got that lovely triangle there in the background. It almost looks kind of Clockwork Orange type.
It does. Wait, hold on. I've got one effect I can add. Hold on one sec, Graham.
Look at that.
See, watch this. See ideas emanating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the perfect image, and we'll probably capture that image and use that in all of the promos for this show. Rob, honestly, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a lovely conversation about music, and I really enjoyed your album. I think anybody that likes intelligent alt rock music, should we say, from someone of our age group, with the wisdom and charm and beauty that we prevail when people get to our age, with lovely vocals as well, because the voice develops and matures with age, so that we stop squealing and we learn how to sing properly.
Yeah.
This is everything you will find on this album. So along with some really killer melodies as well. So please go and give it a try, and then have a lovely weekend listening to it. So thanks, Rob, for joining us today. And until next time, everyone, this has been MyMusic. Bye for now.